more about the difference between the two.
So that's how your dad impacted you with planning and all these things. How did your mom had an impact in your life?
So my mom and then my sister, who is younger, they had a lot of impact on my life too. My mom was, she's actually, my dad passed away a few years ago. My mom is still alive. She lives in India. My mom is actually a classically trained dancer. She dances, she went through, her college in India was a Kathak dancing school. So she actually has a certificate from a college that says this person is a professional Kathak dancer. But then, after she got married and after I was born, she kind of gave up. She kind of gave up that, and that was very, very typical for that time in India and also many parts of the world. Women, once they got married, they were like, okay, that's the end of it. And I've had many conversations with my mom, not when I was a child, but like more recently, like, why did you give up that career? Why did you not continue it? And she goes, like, you were born and your sister was born and who's going to raise you? Like, no, you could have done that too. Of course, like, I'm being idealistic because I'm thinking 2000s and she was living 1970s and 1980s and 1990s, very different world. But part of that actually, part of those conversations with my mom and part of me seeing her sacrifice that is the reason why I think about women in computing and women in general in engineering and women actually making a career out of what they do. Matter of fact, one of the recent episodes I released on the podcast is called Pregnancy and Career. And there I featured interviews with two women, one an entrepreneur and one an academic, both of whom had kids very early in their careers and how they navigated that. I think the setup now is, at least here in North America, it's that you can navigate that now better than you could have in the 1970s, right? And they have some very unique observations. Like, this is not something that I would have thought of. For instance, the entrepreneur person that I interviewed, she says, I knew that when I went and told my venture capitalists that I was expecting, they would panic. That's the first thing that would happen. They would panic, right? They would think, oh, now this person's going to be offline for 9 months, a year and a half. This company is going to go down the drain. Let me pull my funding out. So her approach was the meeting that she went in to communicate the planning, to communicate that she was expecting. She also went in with a plan. She said, here's what is going to happen the next year and a half. On a week-by-week basis, here's what's going to happen. And she said there was no panic. When I explained what was going to happen, the unreliability, the unpredictability was reduced, and there was no panic, right? So I think, and again, that's not a skill that is necessarily taught again in our classes. I don't know any class here that teaches that kind of, how do you navigate expecting, for women. But sometimes it may also be true for men who are taking care of, if you're a single parent, for instance, how do you navigate that and also having a professional life? But I think it's, coming back to your question, I think conversations with my mom make me think a lot more about those issues that women still continue to face today. Even if you don't have a family, even if you're not expecting, you still face a lot of bias issues if you're a woman, if you have a colored skin, if you're African American, if you're Native American, if you're Hispanic, you face a lot of biases. You face biases from people who may not be racist even, but it's just biases, right? For instance, there are well-known. There are studies that say that you guys, when you take a class, you rate the teacher at the end of the class, right? The ICES ratings we have. There are actually studies that say that if you're a taller professor, you get higher ratings, all else being equal.
Really?
Yeah. If you're a male professor, you get higher ratings, all else being equal. There's biases built in people's minds, and this is, it's not going to go away anytime soon. So people face biases even if they're like not pregnant or not having a family. Those, make it even worse. And so, I think just understanding that is step one, right? So I think that's the long answer to your question.
And perhaps creating a class called How to Raise VC Money While Pregnant. That would be
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. And she's this particular guest was very good. The other thing I learned from my mom is And I did not think about this aspect that I learned from my mom until actually my PhD. I'd taken my parents to my alma mater. I did my PhD from Cornell University. So, well, after I graduated, I took my parents back to visit my alma mater, and one of the things I did there is just have breakfast with my PhD advisor and also my parents. The only time my parents met my PhD advisor. Later, my PhD advisor told me, "Your mom is very curious. She has very curious eyes, and she asks a lot of curious questions." And I thought, well, that is actually true. I had never thought about it in my life, but I guess that's where my kind of curiosity mostly comes from. Like my dad is curious, but not like that curious. My mom is curious to the extent that, she will pick up a language just by talking to people, on the street. Like she knows more languages than me or my sister, or certainly my dad. Also, she grew up in different parts of the country, like West Bengal, Kashmir. So she knows how to speak Kashmiri. She also knows how to speak Bengali. And then we grew up in Telangana. So my mom knows fluent Telugu. I'm kind of okay, broken in Telugu. I'm okay. But my mom, she never took a class in her life learning Telugu, but her Telugu is fluent, which is by talking to people, right? So just that curiosity and being okay in making mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. You say a sentence, it's half grammatically incorrect, it's fine. The person got my intent. If you want to give me feedback, it'll improve me. But otherwise, my purpose was served. So that fearlessness and that courage and the curiosity, that combination, it's something that I never thought about it consciously until my advisor told me about it. But I think I just absorbed that through osmosis, like a lot of kids do from our parents, right? So lessons from my dad were a lot more consciously. I'm sure a lot of osmosis, things I learned through osmosis from my dad, through which I don't yet know about, because I haven't really thought about it. A lot from my mom. I think a lot of my lessons were learned through just osmosis, subconscious lessons.
Is your sister also in the US? Or?
Yeah, my sister lives in Canada. She works in a financial firm there. She has an engineering and math degree, but she chose to move into the financial world. So she works there. Her husband works there. She has 2 kids, and the kids adore me. I adore them. They're fantastic. They're very smart as well. My sister's elder kid, who's a daughter, she's musically gifted. I tested her a couple of weeks ago. I suspected that she had perfect pitch, which is when you play a note, I should say. I tested her on like 40 different notes. She was able to identify every one of them.
Really?
Then I started playing chords. She was like, "That's a C major. That's an F minor. That's a..." She couldn't identify like 7th chords because she had not learned 7th chords. But I was like blown away. I was like, this 7-8-year-old kid is like, whoa.
I wonder who she got it from.
Yeah, there's some, my dad used to sing. There's some musical talent in the family. My dad used to sing, and there's some other there. But every person is unique. I think there is some genetics playing, but every person is very, very unique. So my sister